really.
Was it fun?
The grill lines.
It's always fun. Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Larry Schwartz. I'm the Secretary to Governor Cuomo. First, I'd like to welcome and thank our Brooklyn State Legislative Delegation for joining us here today. Also, just as a point of privilege, I'd like to welcome our new mayor from New York City and a personal friend of mine, Mayor Bill de Blasio, to the Red Room for the first time. Welcome, Mayor. Today, we're here to talk about our joint efforts to get a final answer from Washington, D.C. on New York's $10 billion Medicaid waiver, which is vital to protecting our hospitals and healthcare services throughout our state, especially in Brooklyn. Just this past week, we received a very polite letter from Secretary Sebelius, but it wasn't the letter that New York State Governor Cuomo, Mayor de Blasio were looking for. The letter we're looking for is a commitment to that $10 billion waiver, a commitment we need now so that we can provide more affordable care and more accessible care to our residents here in New York State, especially those in Brooklyn. Governor Cuomo has been very vocal, and just recently in his budget presentation, he laid out the risks for if this delay goes on any further. Mayor de Blasio has also made it a point about protecting our hospitals and healthcare services in Brooklyn as one of his priorities. We look forward to hearing from Mayor de Blasio shortly, but first, I am pleased to introduce our governor of the state of New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Larry Schwartz, who's been working on this issue for a very long time. Thank all of you for taking the time to come down, my colleagues from the legislature. Special welcome to my friend, the Mayor of New York. Welcome up north. Good to see you here. Good to have you here. This is the official governor's office. It's called the Red Room. Not quite as ornate as the Assembly and the Senate chamber,
Yes.
you'll notice. Because,
Much more Spartan.
oh, yes. They appropriate the money. And so welcome to Albany, and I hope you enjoyed your first legislative session. It's always fun getting grilled by the legislature. I enjoy it. Yeah, it is enlightening. I try to do it several times a week. But I'm sure it went well, and again, welcome to New York. I'm very excited about the new mayor, and I'm excited about the potential for the city and the state. I've known this mayor for a long, long time. We use the word friend in politics often, and sometimes casually, but the new mayor of New York truly is a friend in the deepest sense of the word. We go way back. We've worked together on a professional level. Personally, we're friends. So I'm excited about this. And I believe that we can do better for the city and for the state, given the relationship. So that is all good news. To the Assembly and the Senate, thank you for taking the time to come down. This is the representatives from Brooklyn, and this is a critical issue for Brooklyn. You remember Brooklyn, Bill?
I've read about it. Sounds like a very fascinating place.
Healthcare in New York, we have a great story to tell in healthcare and what we've done. But we're not out of the woods, and we have a number of hospitals across the state that are still financially distressed. And we have requested what's called a Medicaid waiver. It's a little bit of a misnomer, Medicaid waiver, but what the Medicaid waiver is basically funding from the federal government where they will provide a state funds to aid in the transformation of a health system to a system that actually better serves people and saves money. Sometimes you have to spend money to save money, as we've learned on the state side. And the federal government realizes that, and that's what the quote-unquote Medicaid waiver is. Our Medicaid program has saved $34 billion, $17 billion for the state, $17 billion for the federal government. So we have made great savings, and we can make more through the transformation of the system. But we need the initial funding, and that's the Medicaid waiver. Other states have requested a Medicaid waiver and been granted one. In the past, this state had, in essence, a Medicaid waiver, but we have yet to receive the funding. And the situation is critical. It's especially critical in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is one county, but it's also 2.5 million people, right? Brooklyn as a county is bigger than many cities in this country. And the healthcare system is really on the precipice. And we have been holding it up for months, propping it up for months at a very expensive cost to the state of New York. And we are now in the budget where we either have funding for an issue or we don't. And it comes down to numbers, and it comes down to dollars and cents. And right now, the funding is not there. And the cost for Brooklyn alone is about $1 billion. So it's a problem that really is beyond the scope of the state alone. And that's why the quote-unquote Medicaid waiver, be it $10 billion or some other number. We use $10 billion, but it's a large number. The $1 billion of funding for Brooklyn would come from that amount of money. As Mr. Schwartz said, we got a nice letter from HHS that said they're working on it, et cetera. But justice delayed is justice denied. Help delayed is help denied, and we're at the point where if we don't get help, the system is going to collapse, and there will be closures, and it's unnecessary. The healthcare system in Brooklyn has to be transformed. We've been doing a lot of work on regional systems now. There's an excess of hospital beds in Brooklyn. We know that. But we have to transform the system so that the system works overall. Reduce the excess beds, more primary care, more special care, make sure on a regional basis there's proximate health care, but it's going to take funding to do that. And our message today is very simple. We are united in our plea to the federal government that we need help and we need it now. It's not enough to say it's on its way. It's got to be here on an immediate basis, and we are united in that. Democrats and Republicans, we had Senate Leader Skelos with us, and Speaker Silver was with us last week when we spoke about this. So it's not people of different parties, it's united. And yes, this is the Brooklyn delegation, but the entire conference statewide supports Brooklyn in this matter. And the new mayor, I know, wants to add his voice to the chorus. So with that, let me turn it over to Mayor Bill de Blasio, who survived his first legislative hearing and enjoyed it. Mayor, pleasure.
When do I get to do another? Let's play two. Well, thank you very much, Governor. I have to say, I was just doing the math, Governor, that next spring 2015, marks 20 years of knowing each other, 20 years of working together. And I have to tell you, it has been an extraordinary experience. I want to thank you for all of the work that we've gotten to do together. I will say along the way, the Governor helped me to understand a thing or two about how to do the work of government more effectively. And I appreciate that deeply. It's been a tremendous personal friendship as well. And I remember comparing notes many a time about our children. As you said at one point, you remember when I was bragging about the birth of Dante, the now famous Dante. Yes. And I have to say, Governor, I appreciate deeply our working relationship and what it's going to mean for the people of our city. On top of that, I just want to tip my cap to your team, because as I walked through the door here, I saw Howard Glazer, Joe Prococo, obviously Larry Schwartz. I felt like it was a reunion from various meetings and experiences over the last 20 years. We've all worked very, very closely together. To the Brooklyn delegation, first of all, as your fellow Brooklynite, I could not feel this issue more personally, more deeply. So many of you have stood up to support healthcare in our communities. I want to thank you for that. We can all remember the various rallies, meetings, press conferences, all the things we tried to do to draw attention to the fact that our communities were truly in danger of losing the healthcare they need. And I want to thank you for your assertive, energetic support of these initiatives to protect healthcare. The $1 billion that the governor references that could be applied to this problem through this waiver would have a seismic impact. This would have a crucial impact on securing healthcare in communities across Brooklyn for the long term. You know, we've been living, unfortunately, hand to mouth in recent months. We've been in the court system a lot. You know, we've been in situations where it wasn't clear whether Interfaith Hospital or Long Island College Hospital would even be there the next week. I want to thank the state. The state has stepped in each and every time. I know it has not been easy, Governor, and I know it hasn't been cheap. But you did something powerful by helping us have the opportunity to bridge to long-term solutions. We are united, as the Governor said, we're united in our plea to the federal government to do the right thing for New York, to do the right thing for Brooklyn. Give us this waiver so we can secure the long term. This waiver is meant explicitly for this type of transformation, and we need it, and it's the right thing to do. I have spoken directly to Secretary Sebelius. I've made clear that I feel the same urgency the Governor does, and that we have waited a long time for fairness for New York State, and it's time for action. I'm convinced that we can secure local health care. Yes, in every process there will be transformations, but I'm convinced that we can secure local health care, we can secure emergency room capacity, we can secure primary and preventative care, and some of the crucial services that each hospital specializes in, for example, some of the mental health capacity at Interfaith. So that's what we want to focus on. Governor, if you'll indulge me one more moment, just to say that I appreciate this governor's focus on this waiver because it comes against a backdrop of things that happened before he or I ever got to our respective offices. Over the last 12 years, we lost 12 hospitals in New York City. Some got a lot of attention, like St. Vincent's in Manhattan, others got less attention, but it was the same exact mistake played over and over again, where there was not a clear strategy from leaders at the city and state level to resolve the issue. This is different. We are working together, and we're doing the right thing by saying to the federal government, you have to be at the table to help us solve the problem because you have a tool at your disposal that would have a transformative effect. The facts of these closures has left many, many people without the health care they need. In fact, a recent study said that 1 in 4 Brooklynites today, even with the 2 hospitals still running as they are now, 1 in 4 Brooklynites lacks access to primary health care. And we know that the emergency room capacity provided by Interfaith and Lich makes them the first points of emergency room access for almost 250,000 people. So the magnitude of this is abundantly clear. The waiver is the right thing to do. The governor long since, with what he did with the Medicaid Redesign Task Force, established the notion that we could reform, we could do better, we could actually have a plan, not a series of disconnected transactions, but a plan to preserve health care and make it financially viable. This would be a crucial next step. And we are going to work shoulder to shoulder to get this done, and it's time for the federal government to be a true partner in this process. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Very well said. And exactly right. When you think about the healthcare system, it's amazing how it just almost evolved all across the state with very little planning, very little rationalization. And we're now trying to do exactly that, go back, rationalize the system.
That's right.
With that, we'll turn it over to the press if there are any questions on this topic.
I don't think they have any questions.
They don't? Who's that fella? Do you recognize the fellow with his hand up in the air? You know, Zach, we've been doing the short-term plan for 18 months. The short-term plan, as the mayor said, is hand-to-mouth. It's month-to-month. And this is very expensive, literally hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's not an investment. We're not accomplishing anything. We're just in this holding pattern that is phenomenally expensive. We can't afford it to do anymore. And there's no reason to do it. We're not accomplishing anything. We need to transform the system. We need funding from HHS to do that. We've been talking to them for 18 months, and we need them to act. You know, government needs to respond to the moment. We've had this discussion in this room many times. Well, government has a process, and this is the government process. I know, but it's not that reality has to fit the government's process. It's that the government process has to fit reality, right? The job of the government is to be responsive to the situation. And we need them to respond, and we need them to respond now. Whatever it is, we will do on our end. But we need an answer, yes, 10, 8, 6, or no. You know, We just need an answer, and we need that answer now, and depending on what the answer is, then we'll make our determination.
Governor, to what do you attribute the HHS's failure to act on this? Is it bureaucratic, foot dragging? Does it have something to do with the somewhat fraught history of New York's Medicaid program?
I think, Casey, probably all of the above. I don't want to speculate. People have been critical of the New York Medicaid program over the years. As the mayor said, you inherit a situation predating my administration. There has been criticism of the New York Medicaid program. I think everyone will say of late the Medicaid program has done extraordinary work and is a national model. But there's no doubt that that's in the air. There's no doubt that this is a bureaucratic process that has to be gone through. I understand that, I understand bureaucratic processes very well. I hear that all day long. I also understand that the challenge is the exact opposite. I understand government's process. I also understand the reality of the situation. And there are alternatives. Look, if HHS does nothing, we cannot continue to hold up these hospitals. And you will see hospitals close. And you will see hospitals close and jobs lost and communities hurt. That is the reality of the situation. Government is supposed to stop that from happening whenever possible, especially when it's an unintelligent conclusion. Let me refer that to Jason Helgerson, who's been working more closely with CMS than I have on this.
Sure, certainly, Governor. So the governor's proposal in the budget is $1.2 billion of capital to basically fill in the gap for what CMS says that they were not prepared to fund. I think it's important to point out that New York did have a waiver approved by CMS several years ago that did give us ability to spend money on capital, but they've changed their position on that, so the governor's budget really helps to fill that gap. The other component here is basically to allow pilot projects to bring in private equity, potentially to invest in some of these hospitals. The idea being that with both state borrowing, along with potentially in some of the projects some private equity, along with the waiver funds, collectively between those three sources, we'll be able to really fundamentally transform how healthcare is delivered so that it's sustainable well into the future, even beyond the life of this particular waiver. Absolutely not. So the proposal really is that it's still going to be a not-for-profit administration, but the idea is to allow some private investment, obviously with potential rate of return. But the idea is that we need to find a way to get more dollars in to invest in these hospitals. A classic example we hear from the Brooklyn delegation all the time is, why are the rates in Medicaid lower in Brooklyn than they are in Manhattan? And the reason for that is that Manhattan hospitals have had access to capital. They've invested in the physical plant, and as a result, the rates that the Medicaid program pays are higher to help reimburse for some of that capital. We need to change that paradigm, and these proposals, in essence, in aggregate, will help to make those investments that haven't been made for many years.
Who's asking the question? Please identify yourself. Ken Lovett, Daily News. That's him.
That's him over there?
Yeah.
That guy there?
Yeah, that's him. Looks more scary in person, doesn't he?
Is your security dealing with him or mine?
Yeah, that's right. That's where you make him sit in the back row.
That's right.
Let me refer that to Larry Schwartz.
You don't want to hear from Larry Schwartz? I find that troubling. Larry, I'm going to defend your reputation here.
And honor. I don't believe there's any new developments.
First of all, the governor's office and the mayor's office had excellent communication, and we're working very closely together to resolve this problem. I talked to Tony Shores, the mayor's first deputy mayor, on a daily basis, and we're working cooperatively and collaboratively with SUNY to resolve this matter ASAP.
Governor, given that the initial $10 billion waiver application included some of these capital costs, do you anticipate the final waiver, when the waiver is granted, it'll be less than $10 billion?
You know, I don't like to negotiate against myself, John. We have the same conversation whether we're doing the budget or whatever we're doing, right? The $10 billion is a request. Is it feasible that the federal government comes back and says it's not $10 billion? And as I said, it's 10, it's 8, it's 6, whatever the number is. That is a feasible situation and outcome. But we're not going to negotiate ourselves. We requested $10 billion. We think that $10 billion is the right amount to invest. It is commonplace for these things to go back and forth and for the final outcome to be different than the request. That is true.
Understanding that your budget, as it's crafted right now, does not rely on the waiver being granted. If it is granted, would that allow you to spend less state money on health care somewhere else in the budget?
No, John, because we don't have the number in the budget. That's the point. We do not now have this number in the budget. So there is no way to do it without the granting of the waiver. It wouldn't free anything up in the budget because we don't have it in the budget. Am I making, do you know what I'm saying, John?
Well, but I think what I'm asking is, would it, given that you're not anticipating in the budget, if you did have this $10 billion waiver, would that free something up elsewhere if you then had it in waiver?
Oh, you mean besides the $1 billion for Brooklyn? I don't believe so. Jason, do you know? Or does that?
In fact, the federal government does not want states to use waiver dollars to supplant. Right. So as a result, this is additive resources. This is new investments. Now, over time, we anticipate, as the governor said, that this will generate additional Medicaid savings, which will help us live within the global spending cap, which currently is the law of the state. So obviously, we think that it's going to make the system more efficient. But first, we need to really make some investments here to really make the system sustainable well into the future.
Governor, if we can switch topics just for a second. This morning, the mayor talked repeatedly about local self-determination. Do you believe that the people of New York City should have the right to decide for themselves the city income tax? And if not, why not?
Well, we have a state constitution, which sort of governs what we do here most days. Some would argue that concept on either side. The state constitution says the state approves taxation. Localities propose taxation at times, and then the state legislature has to make the determination. We talk about home rule. Home rule message is the device often by which a locality will express its opinion. But it's clear in the Constitution that the state has to pass a law to authorize local taxation. Otherwise, you'd have different taxation districts all across the state, potentially. And you could have tax wars with neighboring jurisdictions, so, which would obviously wouldn't make sense for anyone. So the state is the planning basis for taxation by the Constitution.
Is there anything the mayor can say or do to have you change your mind on this issue?
Well, I think the mayor, well, first, let's take a step back. On the pre-K issue we're talking about, well, you know the formula for success, Mr. Lovett. 2 steps, 1 caveat. Step 1 is decide what you want to do. Step 2 is do it. Caveat is step 1 is very difficult. It's normally the decision and the commitment. We have decided and we are committed to doing universal pre-K, and that is a very big deal. One of 4 states in the country. I believe with the mayor that it's one of the single best investments you can make in the education system and in young people. You can change people's lives, literally, by getting to them early during the formative period of the mind, et cetera. So this is a very big decision. We're excited about it. It'll make the city a better city and make the state a better state. Second question becomes, well, how do you do it? And that's the discussion that we're going to be having over the next several weeks. I've made my proposal. It's called the State of the State. It's called the budget. The Assembly will make theirs, the Senate will make theirs, the mayor will make his. And that's the conversation that we have, and that's the process that we're going through now, and that's why the mayor was here testifying today. But my proposal is my proposal, like my proposal is $10 billion for the Medicaid waiver. That's my proposal. My proposal is the state of the state and is my budget.
Are you saying that you're opening, you said that your proposal to the feds is not written in stone, and it come back last, are you also opening them to?
You think the Senate and the Assembly may make a modification of my budget? Is that what you're suggesting? I am taken aback at the suggestion. I have made my proposal, and I believe my proposal is the best proposal for the state. And I would be shocked if the Senate or the Assembly tried to modify it.
I just, quick addition, the coordination, communication, cooperation between city and state, as the governor indicated, as Larry Schwartz indicated, is constant on a number of fronts. You know, guess what, guys? Once in a while, we may have different perspectives, but we're going to work it through in a lot of different ways because we have a lot of fundamentally shared goals. And in this case, personally, we've had a lot of the same vision of what government should be doing for people for a couple of decades, and we've been working together on that vision for a couple of decades in different ways. So I never have a problem with the notion that we might have different visions of what's the best way to get something done. But when you're in a constant state of dialogue trying to figure out ways to get things done for people, that's fine. And we'll continue to work together on many, many fronts. And the waiver is a great example of something we feel combined urgency on, and there's going to be a great joint effort to get this done.
Let me take it one step further. I would argue that the test of the relationship, you know, when you think about governors and mayors, and modern political history, you have some relationships that were clearly not productive, right?
What are you saying? I never read about that.
It's vague enough that you really don't know what I'm saying. Keep it vague. You look back at the relationships in history where you would say, well, these were good relationships, right? Governor Harriman, Wagner, Rockefeller, Wagner. It's not that they were periods of time or relationships where there weren't differences of opinion. You will have differences of opinion. You have different positions, you have different jobs, you have different jurisdictions, you have different electorates, you have different needs. You will have differences. It's not that I don't have differences with the Assembly and the Senate from time to time. We do. It's how you deal with them. It's how you resolve them. Is it productive? Is it unproductive? Is it constructive? Is it destructive? That's the test of a relationship that works, and that's the test of leadership. And that's what I'm excited about with this new mayor. Let's take one more question, then I know the mayor has to go. Laura?
So the state submitted its recently application to the Medicaid waiver back from hospitals, correct?
I don't believe, I wouldn't say resubmitted. This has been an ongoing discussion, back and forth for 18 months. Do you use the word, Jason, resubmitted?
I would say we modified our proposal based on CMS feedback.
Right, so Secretary Schwartz said last week that other, and Commissioner Shaw said last week that other states have waited 6 months, periods like that. If the state has to wait another 4 months to get this approved, can the board fund the hospitals that long?
No, the short answer, no. And it's not that, we have waited 18 months is the relevant time frame to the 6 months. The modification was at CMS's request. That's part of the dialogue. You know, we send in the form, the application, they say, well, do this. We send it back doing what they said. That doesn't start the clock all over again, right? That'd be some bureaucratic game, right? Every time you send us a piece of paper, we reset the clock, and you never get to a deadline because we just keep resetting the clock. I can't believe that's what they're saying.
Yeah, I would just a quick addition. I would say February is a really good month for the federal government to resolve this problem.
And do you mean that if you don't have it by February, the hospitals will close by the end of the month?
February is the last period that I can do a modification to our budget. It's not in our budget now. There are no funds to continue this. If we get the waiver, then I will do a budget modification.
Beth, I like your confidence about the process of government. I really admire it.
It's about the money. It's about the money. It's about the funding and how we do it. It's the little details.
It's an ongoing dialogue. It's an ongoing dialogue, and we're obviously representing the common goal. And I said down in Washington at the Conference of Mayors, I applaud the governor for his leadership, which is being felt all over the country on the issue of pre-K. We have a pathway forward that we have to make sense of together, but that's just another day in government, and we're going to keep working together.
Okay, guys, thank you.
It's Larry Schwartz.